Thank you. Chairman Enzi and I have agreed that our budget process is broken and in urgent need of reform. Our committee lacks legislative jurisdiction over the biggest parts of the budget, including tax spending, and appropriators can blow through our budget numbers with the same 60 votes they need anyway, which is probably one of the reasons that nobody is ever here in the Budget Committee, including right now when I'm looking out at so many vacant seats in the audience and everybody who's spoken virtually has left. The only significant thing we still do is called reconciliation, and it has completely lost its original purpose. Just the fact that we're here doing this is peculiar. Under the timetable set by Section 300 of the Budget Act, Congress is supposed to complete work on the budget resolution for the coming fiscal year by April 15th. In January, with President Trump about to take office, Republicans instantly rammed through a budget with no budgetary purpose. Its sole purpose was to allow a majority vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act. When that failed, Republicans needed to instantly pivot to tax cuts for the rich, a favorite pastime, so we are at it again, this time to use that reconciliation shortcut with the sole purpose to deliver enormous tax cuts to very wealthy Americans. Far from reducing debt and deficits, this budget resolution passes along a multi-trillion-dollar cost to our children and grandchildren. It's frustrating that Republican concerns about the deficit appear to have lasted exactly as long as the Obama administration. The chairman said in 2015, we need to eliminate deficits instead of exploding them, and we are facing the biggest debt our country has ever owed. That debt endangers our government, hurts our economic potential, and threatens our children and grandchildren. Yet, here we are today to create a reconciliation pathway to grow our debt deficits by $1.5 trillion in the first decade alone. We're back to the Cheney rule. Deficits don't matter. And by the way, no, tax cuts do not pay for themselves. The deficit explosion following the Bush cuts in 2001 and 2003 squandered what was left of the Clinton surpluses. The Kansas experiment failed spectacularly, and I'd ask unanimous consent to add an article at the end of my remarks called "I Helped Create the GOP Tax Myth, Trump is Wrong, Tax Cuts Don't Equal Growth," written by Bruce Bartlett, domestic policy advisor to President Ronald Reagan, who talks about this as GOP tax mythology and says that rushing through a half-baked tax plan in the same manner Republicans tried and failed to do with health care reform should be rejected out of hand. The late Senator Robert C. Byrd was one of the drafters of the 1974 Budget Act. He testified before this committee in 2009. The reconciliation process was designed to facilitate legislation to reduce deficits. Chairman Conrad took that view also, and he adopted a rule that reconciliation measures must reduce the deficit. Republicans repealed the Conrad rule as soon as they were in power. And now here we are, passing a budget that is not a budget, with the sole purpose to line up a partisan runway for deficit-financed tax cuts for the wealthy. Mr. Chairman, we can do better. Instead of using the Budget Committee to circumvent the regular order of the Senate, which is our sole remaining purpose, as I can determine right now, we should use it as the forum for real bipartisan debate on our nation's fiscal health, including how to address our $20 trillion national debt. What should our debt to GDP ratio be? How long should it take us to get there? And what are the guardrails to keep us on course? We do none of that here. A vote for the budget before us would actually move us in the wrong direction. This budget and this process is a sham. It has the sole purpose of allowing a partisan majority to suspend regular order to pass the Trump tax giveaways. If it passes, it will be the best argument yet for dissolving this panel. And I concur with Senator Corker, who said in his statement that that partisan runway for deficit finance tax cuts is, to use his phrase, that is what it is 100% about. Thank you, Chairman.